This is the DJI 1000. I want to show you some of the things I like most about it and some of the things that it has that other power stations don't. The DJI 1000 has some really impressive features, some of them being easier to access than others, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The first thing I want to mention is that it has the highest continuous output of any 1000 watt battery banks on the market. It can output 2200 watts and it has a peak of 2600 watts, which it can stay at for 30 seconds. Compare that to the previous leader was Anker, the Anker Solux C1000, which had a continuous output of 1800 watts and then a peak power output of 2400 watts. The difference though, one, it's obviously lower continuous from 18 to 2200, but the peak power output from the DJI can stay at peak for a lot longer. So you can stay at peak with DJI for 30 seconds, where with Anker, you can only stay at peak for a couple of seconds, really just to start up like an AC unit or start up a well pump. It's really not meant for anything longer than a couple of seconds. It's a lithium iron phosphate battery, which is pretty much what all of the new batteries are. And it's meant to last for 4,000 charge cycles, which is pretty phenomenal and is kind of the standard now. So one thing that's nice, but is kind of annoying, it has one of the highest solar inputs of any 1000 watt battery bank that I've seen, where it can input a consistent 800 watts of solar power. But in order to do that, you actually have to add another piece to your DJI power bank that you have to buy. And you then have to plug in 3 or 4 individual solar panels in, depending on the size of your solar panel. Whereas on other devices, you can wire all of the solar panels together and then just plug that one thing into the battery, plug that one plug directly into the battery. And there's no additional wiring or no additional plugs that you need to buy to get that output. For example, the Anker Solux 1000, it can get up to 600 watts of solar input at any given time. And it just has one plug in that one plug, and that's it. And that's super, super easy. Whereas this one, you have to add that additional plug section that allows you to get up to that 800 watts of solar input. So it's nice it has a higher solar input, but I think because it's so annoying to use, it's not really worth it. With the existing ports that come with the battery or they're on the battery, you can install up to 2 200 watt solar panels. So you get one 200 watt solar panel on the one plug and the other 200 watt solar panel on the other plug. So it's only 400 watts you get out of the box. If you want to get up to 800 watts, you do have to buy that additional accessory. Actually, on the side of the unit, you have these 2 screws, which I didn't know what they were, but that's what they're for. They're to screw on that additional plug section that you can use for the solar panels. So again, if you're looking for that high output, you do have to invest more into this battery in order to get that higher output. It's a very stealth battery though. It looks really good. It's got a good form factor. I like the way it looks. I like the performance from it. If you're looking for a battery that has really high performance, good output, again, with that 2200 watt continuous output, if you're going to look to power bigger things, AC units, heaters, something to cook with, it's going to be able to power bigger things, not necessarily for longer, but it will be able to power bigger things. Okay, so speaking of output, I want to do a test here. Okay, so we have a spotlight, a filming spotlight, and I'm going to plug it into our DJI power station. So first you got to turn on the actual outlet, the AC outlet. So you click that on, that'll activate those outlets. Then we're going to plug it in. Once we plug it in, we'll see how that affects how much more time we have as far as how much more battery life we have with it powering this light. So the light is now on. It's on a pretty dim setting right now. It's only at 58%. And so what we're at now is 41 watts of output, which is nice to see there. You can see exactly how much output and input right there on the screen. What that shows now is we have 14 hours of battery life at this level. So if we continue at 41 watts output, we're going to be able to charge this or power this battery for 14 hours, which is always really nice to know, especially in an emergency situation, or maybe you don't have solar. Now you know how much time you have left. So I increased the wattage a little bit. Now it's at 72 watts, and now it says 8 hours left. So again, it gives you some more details on how much longer you have left, depending on how much power is going through. So again, I can move this up and down, even to as low as, 10, 15 watts. And it just helps you understand how much more battery life you have, which I've seen it being very, very accurate. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about DJI that I was really actually kind of surprised with is they don't have any connectivity to an app. So no wireless connectivity, no Bluetooth connectivity, no Wi-Fi connectivity to an app where you can control anything wirelessly, which is very interesting because DJI does so much with your apps on your phone to control their drones or to control setting up their microphones or anything, a lot of their other products. Whereas this one is completely disconnected from apps. So if you really like seeing what your battery is doing or controlling your battery settings from your phone, the DJI is probably not going to be the best one for you. I think probably the Anchor would be a better fit for you if you really like the high-tech connectivity. One of the other things that it does do if you're worried about noise, it actually is a lot quieter than any of the other batteries that I've tested as well. So when you're charging, it can be loud. Like, for example, a lot of times when you're charging a battery like this, the fan will kick on and get pretty loud. But for this one, it is extremely quiet. The fan rarely kicks on, and it's the most quiet battery bank that I've tried. So if that's important to you, this is a really, really good option. A couple other things to note. Look at the things that you're going to plug into this. What are you going to need to plug in? How many things are you going to need to plug in? Because the DJI actually has significantly less ports than some of the other battery banks do. It only has 2 AC ports, 2 USB-C, and 2 USB-A ports. So that's it. You got 6 ports and that's all that you get. Now that could be totally fine. You could have 2 higher wattage devices being powered, and then you still have 4 extra ports for your phones, a laptop, or something like that. Whereas maybe you just don't need that many ports. But I think in general, people like to have more ports. So it's something to think about when you're looking at a battery like this. For example, most of these 1,000-watt battery banks have at least 12 ports that you could be using. So just something to think about. How many things you're going to be charging at the same time? What do you want to have access to? I'd made a comment earlier about thinking when I first got this battery bank that be better off with having this battery bank if you're already in the DJI ecosystem, which now I think is actually not the case because DJI doesn't have any of the wireless connection to your phone and an app. It doesn't really matter what ecosystem you're in. It just is a battery bank that's really high performing. So instead of some of these other battery banks like an EcoFlow or an Anchor that have a really good ecosystem of devices and things you can do on the app to control multiple of their devices at the same time, this one's really more of a standalone battery that just is a high performing standalone battery that doesn't matter what ecosystem you're already in. One other thing I forgot to mention was you can change the speed at which it charges. So you open up this little port and then you have this little button here that can change the speed at which it charges. So it could go from the 600 watts of charging to 1200 watts of charging. And it just depends on how fast you want it to charge. I think if you do the 600 watts, it'll charge a little bit more effectively and it will save your battery a little bit. 1200 will use a little bit more of the battery and it will degrade it a little bit more. With how many charge cycles you have, it shouldn't really matter either way. So I would probably charge it fast every time. So after all the testing, I think it's one of the best batteries on the market in that 1,000-watt category. I don't know if I could call it the top one just because it doesn't have any add-ons. Like you can't add on to it. And it doesn't have as many plugs or the Wi-Fi and the app connectivity, which people really like. But with such a high output and just such strong production numbers, it is just a really, really good battery. I think I would definitely recommend to somebody that's looking into getting a battery. This is just a really, really good all-around battery. So I don't think you can go wrong with this.